Hello and welcome, Just a Family. Today's episode, giving you something to talk about. Today's episode is all about the importance of telling your story. I am your host, Melissa Krechler. I'm an identity coach and a spiritual teacher, and I created the show to give you a platform to hear about everyday topics that are meaningful, that you're going to emotionally connect with, and you can start having conversations of your own about. So today, my guest host is Lil, and I'm going to hand it off to you for you to introduce yourself. Tell us about you.
No one ever wants to say my last name. It's Barcaski. I'm Lil Barcaski. I am the CEO of GWN Publishing and Virtual Creatives. GWN Publishing is a ghostwriting service and publishing service. So sometimes people come to us and want us to write a book for them or edit a book for them. And sometimes they just want us to come and publish the book, or all of the above. And our marketing arm is Virtual Creatives, where we create all their marketing materials, from websites to graphics, etc. That's kind of what I do. I do a lot of writing and a lot of assisting people to be published authors on the fabulous interweb and the worldwide everywhere. So that's kind of what I do.
Absolutely. And that's the whole point of this show, right? Is to tell people's stories and have them heard and understood. And everybody's story is different. So let's start off there. Everybody's story is different, right? You can have similar stories, similar genres, similar experiences, but the way you portray that story and the way you experience that story is completely different.
Look, there's a lot of commonality. We do a lot of memoirs. And our platform, my platform for speaking this year, is writing for the greater good, because we're only working with people who are putting out something into the world that can affect change, that can illuminate, educate, elevate other people. So that's kind of where we're at in our books, that we either just, whether it's a devotional or it's a story of sexual abuse, we want people to learn something and be able to tell that story in their own way, in their own voice, in their own direction. So we do a lot of memoir. We do work with a lot of people telling their story. And even if you've experienced something that other people have experienced, there are sadly way too many people in America, women especially, obviously, who've gone through abuse of different natures. But I hear so many versions of that and so many ways that you can be impactful, that your story may touch somebody that my story doesn't touch, or you just don't know like who you're going to affect, because they think that's familiar. I heard a woman the other day talk about her father and things he had done to her and her brother, and it was not like anybody else's version of that kind of abuse. And someone will think, my dad was like that, my uncle was like that, this or that, So you want to reach out to people who find you and see you and connect with you, and only you can do that. So it's your story.
I think the biggest thing that I want to share is just, again, the importance of sharing your story and telling your story is exactly who you can touch. There are people out there who have never told their stories, not even to anybody, whether that be a mild story or a severe story, whatever your story may be. It could be, a very happy story, but you think about the amount of people who have hidden their stories. I know I've talked to women and men who have said to me, and I'm an identity coach, so this is part of what I do, right? Is I've talked to people who've told me about their trauma. If we're specifically talking about trauma, they've told me their trauma stories, and they're like, why am I telling, like, I've never told anybody this. And I say, because that I'm going to, there's no judgment, right? I want to hear your story because I want to help you use it to heal, right? And I want to help you use it to benefit your life in some way, shape, or form. And there are people, like I said, who've never told their story, and they've never healed. Other people haven't told their story because they haven't heard anybody else say, this happened to me. They don't have that relatable aspect where it's like, okay, I'm going to be confident enough to share my story and tell people, and maybe it'll help somebody like me who didn't have that opportunity.
And I think there are two factors to that. I was actually listening to some other ghostwriters talk the other day. We had a little group of things. And one of them said that a lot of the memoirs, people stop themselves from telling the most impactful part of the memoir because someone in their life who would be hurt is still alive. I have one that we did that a woman wrote that's phenomenal, but her dad is still alive. And I honestly suspect when he goes, and he probably will fairly soon, he's an older gentleman. God forgive me for saying that. I'm killing him. But no, when he goes, I think because her mom died. And I think she was almost there. And when he's gone, I think she'll probably put the book out, and it's brilliant. And what happened to her is completely unique. No one has been through this. There are not very many, well, there are very handful of people who went through what she went through, because she's one of the first children of the Hare Krishna movement. And there are not that many of them that can say that, and that they went through what these kids went through. This is, a couple hundred of them altogether in the whole world. And none of them have told this story pretty much. So there's always that. But the other aspect, I think, really is so we're afraid to tell the hard parts, right? And like you say, the other aspect is we don't think that anyone else has been through what we've been through, so we're maybe ashamed to say it. Look at how many years gay people didn't say who they were gay, or women who were beaten by their husbands didn't say they were beaten by their husbands, or men who were beaten by their wives, God forbid. They're never going to say that, because they're really embarrassed. They can't believe that they let their wife do that, and somehow they're stronger, or men have supposed to be better. It's all these stupid stigmas we put on everything that people are afraid to say who they are or come out. I heard a woman speak the other day. I was now a county commissioner, and in like the 80s or maybe even early 90s, she and her wife were outed by the St. Pete Times in Florida, and she was already in politics, and she was so embarrassed in her church. I'm thinking, really? You don't think like now, you're like, oh, like didn't everybody know you guys were a couple for how long? And it was so hard for her, and she was so like, and she stood up there and told the entire story to a room full of women for National Women's Day, and I could see the tears in her eyes. Like she was so embarrassed when, like I said, it must have been the early 90s that somebody turned her in, like, I know, and now we don't think so, because so many people have come out and said, Pete Buttigieg is, the secretary of whatever, the roads or something, whoever's in charge of roads and bridges. You got guys, there's so many people, right? And there's so many women, sadly, who've come forward and said they had to leave their husband, or they had to walk away from an abuse problem, or there's more movies about it, there's more film. So it allows people to feel like they're not alone. Like you say, they're not shamed or ashamed of what has happened to them that they had absolutely no, control of, especially children who are abused. With so many women I have met in my life, they're abusive. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've got one in my life right now who's completely abusive of a friend that turned out to not be. I can't work with her anymore. Can't deal with her. She's an incredibly abusive person because she was an abused person, and it's not her fault. Her father abused her from the time she was a kid, and being that way has now made her abusive. She doesn't know how not to be abusive. So if somebody had talked to her, she's in her 50s, at 30, and said, don't do this, don't go down this path, her life would have been so much happier than it is. It's a very unhappy life. She's living an incredibly unhappy life because no one said to her, it's okay to talk about this. It's okay to, and she's a friend, she will never tell her story. And that's a shame.
She's not being true to who she is, not what she's thought to be, right? And again, identity, right? So I feel that.
It's a shame. I mean, she's a wonderful person. She's just completely broken, and as is her sister, they're broken people. Never will be happy, and destroys every relationship she's ever in, screws up everything she does. Screws up businesses, friendships, a tragedy. But she's never really actually dealt with the fact that this was not her fault. This, and it's not. And other people have gone through that. I've got other friends in the same boat who've been abused since the time they were very young and have completely turned their lives around. And you have to find that place, and maybe having community or having other people that you can talk to, or telling your story. And we have all tried to get her to write her story down because that would help her. And that's an example of the kind of person that doesn't. Whereas my friend who grew up in India and couldn't be more redheaded, freckle-faced, a standout amongst Indian children, had the guts to at least tell her stories. And other people know about it. Our friends have read it, and other people have read it. And eventually, someday, she'll put the story into the world. Because she's living an amazing life, a very happy life, with hundreds of friends and a wonderful relationship and a beautiful home and fantastic career, $1 million property. So everybody's different.
Yeah. You need to acknowledge who you are, right? And again, when I talk about being, your story doesn't define you. And in your friend's case, where the one that you couldn't work with anymore, she allowed her story to define her because she didn't know any better, right? You get to choose at 80, and I'm going to repeat this on every episode if I have to, but 85% of your life is dictated by your choices. It's by who you are, what you want, what you believe, right? You create 85% of your reality.
Right.
Then there's that 15% that you don't control. That's out of your control, right? If somebody smacks you in the face, or, you know, if somebody in your life abuses you, the first time they do it, or the first few times they do it, that's not in your control. You can't control what other people do, what other people say, what other people believe. So having something done to you, or having a situation that you feel victimized or you feel defines you, that's a choice. And as bad as that sounds, I'm not victim blaming or anything along those lines, because I get it. Absolutely, I get it. I was abused as a child. Absolutely. I grew up with a undiagnosed narcissistic mother, who I no longer speak to. I don't speak to her entire family, because they all, you know, took her story over mine, and wouldn't even acknowledge me. And, you know, my father touched me. He molested me when I was, you know, 8 to 10. And there's a lot of stories. I became a prostitute and an escort. And I think that's the first time I've actually said this on the show.
Wow, that's so crazy.
So I have multiple stories to share in multiple situations. I've met face to face while I was an escort. I met a pedophile who flat out, for some reason, told me what he was interested in, and I said, I can't talk to you. Like I can't be in the same room. Like, that's no. But I have such a unique perspective on humanity, on identity, that I love hearing people's stories. Like I wouldn't be like you. I can't copyright worth of anything, right? Half of my stuff I'd rather pay other people to do. But I wrote my own book, and I detailed my past relationships. And here, I was going to mention this in one of your comments about the different types of storytelling, and people who won't share their story. I shared part of my story in a book that I wrote, and I caveated that story, and I put a disclaimer in that story that the events and the thoughts in this book are my own. They may differ than another person's. Right? And the people that are in this story, that this doesn't represent their beliefs, their views, or how the story played out for them. It was completely all me, right? But yeah, it's sharing your story and being able to say that.
I think when we abuse children, I've got, like I said, several friends that have been in the same situation. They're all different kinds of realities that have come from it. One is completely dissociative disorder, and she's one of the loveliest, most kind, most wonderful people I've ever met in my life. I love her more than life itself. She's fantastic, but she's lost a lot of times. She gets mixed up and lost and makes terrible decisions, just terrible ones. But she couldn't be kinder or nicer, and she abuses herself more than she'll ever abuse anyone else. She's just self-abusive. And then others I've met have, you know, are unable to realize that they're being abusive to other people, that their narcissisticness nature is for a reason. They absolutely understand why they would be a narcissist. When you do that to a child, you destroy a lot of who they are. But I think as we get older, if we can start to share those stories and start to look at other people and be in communities of people who maybe have those same kinds of stories. And I've met, unfortunately, like I said, a lot of them, from my friend who grew up in India to people I know, people I've had business dealings with and things like that, and friendships, that, you know, it really does help to know that you're not alone, to be able to, even if you just write it down and never put it anywhere else, just write it down,
burn it,
keep it yourself, write a journal and say, this is exactly what happened to me. And maybe have support groups that you go to or something where you could talk this through, and good counseling. And when you get to 40 years past the situation, people are going to blame you. They're going to say it's your fault. I don't know. I don't know it's that person's fault as much as they just never got on the right path. Some people just never get on the right path. They never get on the right path with their work. I have a buddy who never made more than $20 an hour on a good day in the print business, but he found a wonderful girl. Her parents died, left him a bunch of money, and now they travel the world. He's the best dad in the world. That path was fantastic. You know, his work path, he never got there. You know, he never found a job that was going to make him any money. You know, everybody's got different steps they take.
But was he happy?
You know, I think he was. I mean, you really do. And I'll tell you what, like I said, for him, he is genuinely the best father I've ever met. I mean, I've never met a better father. I think his son is an angel. He's a nephew of my life. I think I follow him around like a puppy dog, going to watch the kid in plays. He's great. And I just like, he's brother of my heart. You know, he's a terrific guy. But, you know, yeah, I think he wasn't abused as a kid. He made some stupid mistakes, but he wasn't ever. But I think when we abuse people, or people go through very bad abuse, a lot of times it's really hard for them to get over that. And sometimes writing it out does really help. Sometimes putting the book in the world. We're putting out a book, hopefully next week, called Pieces. And it's by M.S. Monroe and M. Susan Monroe, M.S. Monroe. M.S. wrote this book because all of her girls were abused by her husband, and she had no idea. She didn't see it. Did not see it. They had this idyllic life. The first line of the book is so stunning. Before we were a statistic, life was beautiful. That's the first line of her book. And she had no idea. They lived in the country, and they had a lake house, and he seemed like he was the nicest guy. And she saw some red flags she probably should have seen. More, not the kind of thing that would have led to this. But as each of her daughters got to a certain age, they started to get very emo and dark. And she thought, well, maybe it's living in a rural area. They don't have, cosmopolitan. They're just angry. They don't want to live. Nope, it was him. And by the last one, the teacher caught on, and thank God for that teacher, was able to break that open, and she's able to change that and fix it. And do as much as she can to be close. And this is the story too. I've and I won't out anyone, but there are mothers I have met amongst the people I've just mentioned who don't say, yeah, that happened. And your mother was a narcissist, right? That happened. And it happened on my watch, and I've effed up and I should be sorry. And what can I do to not give you everything in the world, not take care of your whole life for the rest of your life, but how do we mend that fence? Heal. How can we heal it? Whereas M.S. Monroe has figured out to heal it. She's bothered to take the steps, and her daughters and her are now in a place that's far better than they ever would have been, because she owned up that she probably should have seen some things, and she's sorry, and she's mad at herself a little bit, but she's not. You can see, you could be a genius and miss these kinds of things, right? So sure. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, but and you think something looks, from one direction looks a certain way. So the more we tell these stories, and Pieces is a phenomenally beautiful book. It's an easy read. It's not even 20,000 words. It's a short book, but it's beautiful, and it'll be out shortly. But I just hope everyone will read that book, because even if nothing like that has ever happened in your life, there are things in your life that you've done that you wish you could heal from, and you could fix, and you could say, I wish I could fix this friendship, or I wish I could make this better. Heal some of that. But there's no way to heal it when there are issues, like there are great issues. I think I'm unstable. There we go. Mm-hmm. So, everybody's got to try to find their own way, and not everybody's fortunate. Not everybody's fortunate that they either have the intellect or the capacity or the mental space to say, I'm in trouble. I'm hurting other people. I'm hurting myself. How do I fix it? And then is the help out there? And sometimes just being able to talk out loud and say, this happened to me, whether it's on a stage as a speaker or in a book or both. And most of the people who write books with us go out and talk about what happened. That's
for sure.
I use that book as a tool. So that's the reason they do.
No, I agree. That one of our viewers said that book sounds amazing, and it absolutely does.
Absolutely.
I think
if they want to read it, look for it. It'll be out in about 3 weeks. It'll be on the shelves. M Monroe. It's Munro. If anybody wants to look for them, M.S. Monroe. It'll be out Pieces, and this is subtitle, but I'll look for it. I'll try to spread the word. It's a phenomenal book. Absolutely gorgeous.
Absolutely. What do you think the first? So we talked about why people don't share their story, right? And why they don't open up, right? And it's that trauma. It's that trigger of not, the fear of being ridiculed, the fear of being judged or
the pain,
rejected, right?
The pain of reliving it all.
And the pain of reliving it, yeah.
Yeah, it's miserable, it's not fun.
So what do you suggest is the first step? Journaling, writing it out, sharing it with themselves. Absolutely, I agree with those.
Timeline. I would say the first step is a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a difference between an autobiography and a memoir. I don't know if you know the difference, but an autobiography is your entire life. I've worked with people who started at one guy started talking about how the priest was saying the prayer for the dead over his mother because they weren't going to make it, and he's now he lived and ended where we left off at 60 years of age. But my friend who we were trying to get to write a book, her story for me started at 12, because at 12 she made a decision to walk away from this hot mess, and she was brave and crazy. She did a very brave thing, and it was a wonderful thing to start there. And I wrote her first chapter with her and said, "This is your story. You're a memoir. This starts here to where you got to a place where you were trying to heal." So a memoir is a piece of your life, about autobiography, your whole life. So the thing I think is to determine what you're writing. Are you going to talk about a section of your life or your whole life? Is this a journal for where you are now? Are you going to go back and forth in time? Kind of figure out what you want to talk about. So if something happened to you at 12 that changed something, or something happened to you at 12 that, or you were raped at 12, or you decided to be okay to jump off a building and you broke every bone in your body. I was listening to a story the other day about a guy.
Or even if you came out.
Right. Well, the day you came out. Right. There's another one. Or there was one guy, I was watching a movie. He had some kind of weird disease where he sleepwalks, and it's a suicidal sleepwalking. I don't know if you've heard of this, but they sleepwalk and want to kill themselves in their sleep. No reason. It's just some crazy thing. He jumped off the side of a building. He was like 22 years old, and just in his sleep goes, "I think I'll kill myself," and jumped off this building. And he lived. He was fine. But so now he's telling the story. So where does your story start for you in your mind? And where do you think you want to end it? Where you are now, or is it a piece? And then start the timeline. Put a timeline together. This happened, and you don't have to write it. Just this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Like as if you're just making a chart. And then you've got something to start with. And then you can outline from there and say, okay, so when this happened, these things happened inside of that. And then when this happened, these things happened inside of that, and so on and so on. So I think that's the way to kind of look at it. And if you may have to detach yourself a little bit from it, in a sense. If you're looking at it, maybe do look at it from an outsider's point of view, and be able to tell it in a way that helps you, with the knowledge that it will also help others. Because, like I always say, if you write, work, and live for the greater good, I promise you will succeed. And if you don't, I promise you will fail. There's no question. This is not even a question. Yep. So I say that timeline.
We have a audience member talking about also not sharing your story is often due to the impact that it will make in the relationships with the people you are a part of the story. So we did talk about that. They may be hurt, and you are willing to mute yourself in order to stay safe in a relationship. Unfortunately, it's not telling me who wrote the comment, but I can see the comments. So I apologize for not saying your name. But we did touch on that. And again, in my own book about my past relationships, I highlighted, I think about 5 or 6 of my most important relationships, romantic relationships. And I did put in there that everything that happened, or everything that I'm writing about, is from my perspective, my view of what happened, my beliefs. There is the possibility. I messaged my son's father when I knew I was putting out the book. I messaged my son's father. I called my husband's mother, and I told them, because I did mention the fact that I was a prostitute and an escort in the book. I did mention my abuse as a child in the book, very, very minutely in the book. But again, I wanted to make sure that all of these people had I'm doing this, I've done this. It doesn't represent your version of what happened, but this is my story and I'm sharing it. And I want you to be aware that that's happening. They were all okay with it. I'm lucky, for the most part, the people that I choose to surround myself are very supportive. Not all have been, which is why I don't talk to, majority of my blood relations. But again, it all depends. It depends on what your story is, whether or not you're comfortable sharing it. If you're not comfortable sharing it, the biggest thing I find, and again, this comes down to my profession, my identity coaching, is in order to share a story, what I do is when people share their story with me, it's because I take their stories and their beliefs and their situations, and I connect the dots. I find what that story or what that situation is creating now. how it relates to what they're feeling now. I work backwards, but what they're going through now, how it relates to what's happened in their past, in their childhood, in their families, and their schooling and their peers. Each thing that you've experienced is based on your perception of it, right? So your perception of that event or your perception of your story is uniquely your own. Now, if that story is still hurting you now, and let's say it's 10, 15, 30 years later, if it's still hurting you now, and you can't even talk about it, you can't even think about it, then that story is unresolved. I'm a firm believer that those stories have a lesson. And in those lessons are either going to create growth, they're either going to create strength. My favorite quote that I created, because why not, right? I like to be original, is negativity is the catalyst to positive growth. There is not a single person in this entire world, in this entire universe, who is free from negativity. Everybody has a story, every single one of us. And that negativity, while I don't wish it on anybody, I'm not promoting negativity. I don't wish it on anybody. It's a guarantee. You are guaranteed taxes, guaranteed death, and guaranteed negativity. Those are the
Something
three.
bad's
right?
gonna happen. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, but if you take those situations, they're going to hurt. Absolutely, they're going to hurt. And I'm sorry that they happened in your life, but they're going to create something better. You think of Jim Carrey, and just off the top of my head, Jim Carrey, right? He wrote himself a check when he was a starving artist for $200,000, I think it was, and he was nowhere. He was nowhere, and he changed it. He used that moment to change his life. Rocky Balboa. So I can't for the life of me. Oh, who was that?
Stallone?
Stallone. Sylvester Stallone. He gave away his dog because he was homeless. He had nothing and he had no one. And he gave away his dog because he couldn't take care of him. And that's when he got Rocky Balboa, right? That's when that was created. And he took that pain and he created something amazing. Yeah. You think about every negative experience and the people, especially for you, Lil, the people that you've worked for, when they share that story and when they change their emotional perception and the way they believe that story happened for them instead of to them, what great things come from that. I had a miscarriage. In the middle of me having a miscarriage, I went on a job interview and I got my first job as a legal assistant. I was straight out of my course that I had to take, my diploma. I was straight out of that. And that was a horrifying experience going through that miscarriage. I went to the interview in the middle of this situation, in the middle of that week. And I got my first job. And from the time I got that job, it just kept getting better. Right. But I also didn't end up with the father, which we're all saying is a great thing. Because I'm very happily married now. But if I had continued, if that birth had continued, I would have been stuck with him. I would have been in a situation that I didn't want to be in the long run. And my life would be completely different. So that door closed for me and another opened. I went on to have 2 more beautiful children plus a bonus, right? So I now have 4 children. Those stories can make you stronger depending on how you look at them, right? So that's what
right. And I think you have to have, right. When you're I think sometimes I wanted to call my friend Velas's book Resilience Savant, because and I'm still trying to push the color there. I think there are some people who are born with resilience, like a savant is born sitting down to piano and playing piano. They just have it. And others have none. And some of us have to build it as we go. Most of us, I think, have a little, and we build it as we go. But if you think about children have a lot of resilience overall. But when you break them as children and they lose that sense of resilience, that they can't fight back, they're too small, they're incapable of fighting the bully, they're incapable of fighting the horrible dad or the horrible mom or the the uncle that holds them down. I mean, they lose some of their resilience, I think, and it's very difficult to regain that. But there are ways to
The
do
bullies.
it. The bullies. I mean, it's difficult to regain that sometimes. But I think as you get older, and it again, for some people, they're on. I've got friends, and one in particular who's on loop. She's on a loop. She continually every day will tell you the same stories about her, the things that was so great when she was younger that she's built up in her mind that probably weren't that great, because they make her feel better that I did this and then I did this. And every time you're with someone that has done something, she says, "Oh, I did that. I did that before, and I did it 20 years ago, and I was really good at that." And she can't let anyone else be good at something because she's trying desperately to feel like she's got something to hold on to, and continually lives in the same loop. Same relationship, changes it, that breaks up, everything goes apart. Same relationship, picks the same person, and it ends the same way.
Cycle.
She's in a cycle she can't break, right? And we have a lot of friends who are in those kinds of cycles. We know that sort of cycle. They can't see they're in a cycle and say, "Wait a minute, I'm doing the same thing over again. This is not going to work," right? The insanity thing, So, but what we don't understand in situations like that is one of my littleisms. One of my things is that the worst things that happen to us are the best things that happen to us. And I get a lot of flack for saying, and I believe that we do what we want 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
That when we get to a certain point, we're doing what we want, and we make the decision to do those things. But I do think sometimes it's just a matter of not seeing that you're in a loop, or not understanding that you haven't broken whatever the cycle is, and you don't know that you're in a cycle. If you're in this whirlwind and that seems normal to you, and chaos is normal, then you normalize chaos. You stay in victim mentality, and what victims do is abuse other people. They don't realize they're doing it. And my fiance is a bit of a genius. She's crazy. I love her to death, but she's crazy. But she's a white light healer, and she's absolutely brilliant. And she sees the dead and talks to the dead, and she's like no one I've ever met. You guys get along really well.
I like her already.
Oh, she's everything. She's gorgeous.
Congratulations on the fiance part, because
well, we broke up. We broke up for 2.5 years through COVID. We broke up. We went separate directions. We did lots of stupid things, and then recognized. But while we broke up, she spent 2 years in very heavy therapy, and quit drinking. And she's completely sober. And she's got a lot of. We both have a lot of work to do. We got a long way to go, but she's a genius. I mean, she's absolutely brilliant artist, brilliant at a lot of things. But interesting for me, because she does kind of see the dead, and I believe her. My story started when I was, one of my first and earliest memories is my uncle jumping off the Empire State Building. And he was my brother, my father's only brother, the young brother. And before he did that, I was 6 when he went. Every night he came home from a war, and every night he was at my house eating dinner while my dad worked at night school. My dad was teaching, and he was there every night. And he'd have dinner and he'd leave. Right? Nothing, not like to put me to bed and something bad happened. My mother was his best friend, and she adored her. And she helped, he got engaged, she went to get married, and 5 weeks later, he jumped off a fucking building. Pardon my French, I'm sorry, I said curse word. He jumped off a building, big building in front of everyone in the whole world, right? So part of my story was always wondering, the pain of losing him, and I'm not understanding why this man who I adored and worshipped as a kid would leave like that and leave this hole in my family, because it destroyed a lot of things for my father, it destroyed a lot of things for my family. Yeah. It changed the game. So my fiance said to me, "Well, I don't know how to talk to you about this, but he's never left you." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "He's here all the time. The reason all these amazing things happen to you all the time is because he's right here. But he didn't want you to know that, because if you knew that, you might not work as hard as you do. He's always been here. He's always been right alongside of you. He never ever left you. And he was in love with your mother. And you were right to begin. That was the problem. He couldn't face the fact that he couldn't have her."
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I pondered as a child, as I got older too. He was so beautiful, so handsome. Whenever he tells me I look like him, I think, cool. I have a similar eye thing I do. My one eye closes a little more than the other. We have the same dimples, the same everything, but same coloring. But he was so good looking and so charming, and I have friends of my mom's and dad's that would just adored him. One of my aunts was in love with him in high school, but Dutch aunt. But anyway, point being that I've carried that around a long time, and she really was able to tell me something that really changed the game for me very recently, that I feel like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But I always thought, was he either in love with my mom, which was my first thought, or was he gay? And in that time of frame, and those years, where you can't say you're gay, because he was so pretty. I was wondering maybe he was gay. And she said, no, he was in love with you, and he couldn't face it. Your dad was his buddy, and he loved your dad, but he thought he was a better guy for your mom. and he got married to the wrong girl and couldn't face it and jumped off a building. So these are the kinds of weird things that happen in your life. And it's always part of my story that, that changed who my father was. It changed the kind of person. I remember my dad being this happy-go-lucky, fun guy and doing crazy stuff with me, making tents on the floor and teaching me about dinosaurs and birds. And my dad was a scientist. And then after that, he was so despondent and so in such despair. And he drank a great deal for a little while. And they sent me to live with my grandmother, which changed my life. I had to go live with the grandparent for a very long time. And I felt abandoned as a kid because I didn't know at 6 why I wasn't living with my family. Why I love my grandmother, but when your mom and dad send you off to live with someone else at 6, it changes who you are. Is it just a terrible story like someone who's been sexually abused at 6? No. Is it my story? My story.
Impacting.
It was impacting to me. And it impacted who I became, and it changed a lot of things for me. It changed the kind of person I am based on my grandmother and her needs, things I had to do for her because she was crippled, and all the things that changed who I became. And I always see myself as the hero in the story, which is probably stupid, but I'm always trying to fix things and be the hero and make everybody happy. And a lot of that was because of my childhood. So everybody's story makes them who they are, but you don't have to be, you don't have to ruin your life and everybody else's around you because of your story, and mostly your own. Don't ruin your own life. Don't let it ruin you and who you could be, and make your own happiness destroyed because somebody did something terrible to you, whether you were 2, 5, or 100. It's not fair. You can say no to that and say, I'm going to find my way out of this situation. I'm going to try to be happy. I'm going to stop being mean, or I'm going to stop being selfish or abusive or hard on myself. I'm going to stop being abusive to myself. To find me again and who I really am. And that doesn't mean going backwards. Never. No. It means going forwards. When you see yourself doing, if you say, well, I found that person I wanted to be with, the person I was with 20 years ago, everything's like it used to be scared because you're just in the loop. You're in the cycle. You haven't changed a thing. And when you start to change, when you do something different and take the chance to do something that's out of what was comfortable, then you're breaking the cycle. But if it feels comfortable, you haven't changed a damn thing. And you're about to go to the same path and you're about to start over. You're going in a circle. And that's the thing. So stop doing that. Look and go, wait a minute. This is the same guy I dated before. He's a jackass just like the last one. He's the same kind of guy. Don't change it.
One of the things I really want to touch on about facing your story is just that facing your story. We've had comments about, the fear of not being heard, of, rehashing what happened. I've met a lot of people, and these people have not been ready for what I do. So I've had to say no. But if the way you look at facing your story, right? That story, again, does not define you, first of all. One, you can't, it can only hurt you now if you let it. Like, you're going to feel the feels, you're going to have those emotions come up. But if you let that fear of going through that, you're not going to be able to heal it, right? If you're too scared or too afraid, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. You have to be ready and willing. But if you are too afraid to talk about it, and you are too afraid to get help with it or vocalize it, even to somebody like me, I'm an identity coach, right? I deal with trauma. Or somebody like you know what I mean, who's getting people ready to share their story, counseling, therapy, whatever it may be, you have to be ready to face the story. And when you are capable of facing that story, you're capable of changing it.
Right.
That's not changing what happened. That's not changing how it happened. That's not changing how it affected you. It's changing how it affects you now.
And how you let it affect the way you treat other people.
Yeah.
And the way you behave in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that for a lot of people, they think they've faced the thing. Oh, I did 10 years of therapy. Yeah, because you did. It's funny how you're doing the same thing you did before. So 10 years of therapy with someone who isn't helping you any isn't 10 years of therapy, if you even did that. Or, and therapy is a good answer, but it's not the only answer. Sometimes it is not. Sometimes it's finding your way to whatever you call God. I would say every time everybody asks me a question, say, what's your favorite book of all time? So I say the same thing every single time. The Razor's Edge by William Somerset Maugham. My father gave me that book, and I thought my story started at 6. When I'm about to write my memoir, my story starts about 14, and my father handed me that book, and he said, "Wade through the first 50 pages. If you do, I promise you, it's going to change your life." And I want to slap him because it did, because that book made me who I am today. That one book,
Yeah.
because there's one man's search for God in his own way, and whatever you call God, and the way he went through the world. And what he found out was important as opposed to what wasn't important is impactful. And that's the thing. If you can start to shed away the things that you think are important and they're really not, and you start to look at the things that actually serve you and serve others, not just you, it isn't about money. It isn't about where you live. It isn't about who you're with. It's about what you do and how it affects the people in your life. And if you can't see that and go forward that way, you're going to have a lot of trouble in your life. And it's you gotta, if you believe in karma, and I do, there are people who think I'm a complete jackass, I'm sure, but I know for me that I will always do the right thing in the right way without hurting me and without hurting others. And that's as much as you can possibly do. So back to what you asked earlier about how do you go forward. I'm not trying to sell myself as a ghostwriter. There are plenty of us. But, if you don't know how to start, I will say for some people with a memoir especially, having someone to tell the story to who then writes it down for you is a way to go. And there are lots of people like me who will work with you, who will be your coach or guide you along and say, okay, let's meet every Tuesday at 2:00 in the afternoon for an hour or so. Tell me a piece of it. With Vilas, I went every Friday to her house for months, and I'd get there around 10:30 in the morning, and sometimes I didn't leave till dinner, and her friends were coming over, and I'd stay through cocktail hour. Sometimes I left at 3, but she could sit on the couch and tell me what happened to her, and then I would give her back a chapter and say, "Is that what you said?" More or less, this is what you were thinking of, I had one client whose sister was raped and murdered on a bicycle ride at 12 or 13, for 13 years old. And they found her a month later. They found the body a month later. Oh my God, it was torture. For a whole month, they didn't know where this kid was. They couldn't find the body.
Horrible.
So now she's an only child at 15, and what she went through and the rest of her life. And she did the same thing. Like, she talked to me, 1 hour a week. And we put a great book together. It's hopefully going to be traditionally published, not by me. Because she's been on the news and all kinds of, things, obviously. So if you look, even if it's that you sit with a friend and tell the story and record it, and find somebody you trust so you can tell the story out loud to, record it, and then get an auditor and accountant. It'll make a document for me. You can look at it later. So there's lots of ways to go to try to do this without pain, or as little pain as possible, I think is the answer. It's my privilege and my honor when people tell me their story, and I'm the person they hand that story to make peace of it and make sense of it and organize it for them, organize their thoughts.
Yeah. I'm just writing down, there was a couple of things I wanted to mention. One being that maybe I should get you to do a book series for me on all my various experiences and how those work.
I'm sorry that I'm so fascinated by the whole prostitute thing. It's like,
oh no, that's fine. I own that.
Crazy.
I own that.
Well, yeah, and that's so different.
And I'm not gonna lie.
Like, I hear you're this mother of 4, living in Canada. You're like a nice rural girl, and you're like, well, it's prostitute for a while. I was like, what?
And my husband and I just celebrated our 13th wedding anniversary on Tuesday.
That's fantastic. Good for you.
Right. So my life changed. Right. And like I said, I've been through a ridiculous amount of situations that could have broken me and could have brought me down and could have changed who I was. And while they did certain ways, I've always been very strong in my identity, very strong in pleasing myself and making sure that my voice is heard and I'm, authenticating me. And that's one part of the show, right? You were mentioning—
You are a resilience savant.
Oh, I am. No denial there. I wanted to tell you, so I'm a coach, so we have catchphrases as coach, right? Like our empowerment statement or I help statement, right? And you made a comment, it made me think of mine. So every time somebody asks me what I do as an identity coach, my response is I empower you to take out your trash, reclaim your identity, and take charge of your life so that you can start living it your way for you. And it's exactly that, taking out the stuff that's no longer serving you, changing it. You mentioned people who've gone to therapy for 10 years. Every single one of my clients have been in counseling. Every single one of them have been in counseling and therapy, and for years. And they come to me and they're like, it's still not changed. Like I can cope day to day, but nothing's changed. Like I'm still doing these, I'm still in the cycle. And I'm like, okay. Within a couple sessions, they're noticing a difference, right?
Yep.
It's not like if therapy works for you, if counseling works for you, if psychology, whatever, right? Like any route, right? But there are other options. Like for me, my clients have told me flat out, like counseling is like the surface level cold, right? It's dealing with the symptoms of the cold,
right.
Or like an infection, right? Where what I do is actually antibiotics. Like I'm like antibiotics. I get right in there and say, okay, this is no good anymore. Let's
It's not good. Right? Throw it out.
Right.
It brings to mind a friend. I had a friend who's therapist. The therapist that got her to change her life. And she's a really cool girl. And she said that the therapist, she was talking, blah, 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 this happened to me. A lot of what happened to you, a lot of really bad foster homes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And lots of abuse. And the therapist took a big garbage pail in the office and dumped it on the ground. And she said, "You're going to pick that up?" And she said, "What?" She said, "You pick up all this garbage?" So, what do you mean? You threw garbage on the floor? Where? Because it's your trash. Throw it. Pick this crap up and throw it out. You want to keep this garbage? That's you right there. She said, "That's your junk. That's what you've been spewing at me for months now. This is all your shit. Pick it up." And she said, "Lil, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
I got it."
Yep.
And she's a great girl. She's a terrific lady.
And there's a way to do that. Mm-hmm. Right? It sounds simple, and the concept is simple. But actually doing it and knowing how to do it for you, because not everybody is the same, right? Everybody uniquely has that story, but everybody uniquely has a way to change that story, right? To make it, again, for them, not against them. Right. The other thing I wanted to broach on with children, right? We're adults. I'm 38.
Theoretically.
Yeah, theoretically, we're adults. I'm 38. If something happens to you, right? If something happens to you now, and let's say when COVID hit, and I don't like to talk about COVID often, but when COVID hit, it was a shock to a lot of people. And it was really negative for a lot of people, right? How did you handle it? For the amount of people who, and I've already done an episode on this, the positivity movement, okay? Oh, I'm going to be positive and think positive and no negativity allowed. And I'm like, as soon as COVID hit, I said, watch. I said, all these people who have been positive and avoiding negativity, I said, they have no choice now. They have no choice now. And I've been saying it for 5 years. Like, you have no choice. But you think about your coping mechanisms, your coping skills as an adult. Where did you learn those as a kid? All of your cycles, all of your thoughts on what on your self-worth, on what your life should look like, what it does look like, all the decisions you make come from when you were a child. And it's not just negative experiences that create that, it's positive ones too, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a negative or positive, situation that created a belief. If that belief isn't working for you now, then you're going to keep having those cycles and right. Keep calling in those experiences. Right.
Exactly. It's very, very true. I don't know. It's just, I look at people, I think, well, some of them somehow manage to do whatever needs to be done, and they get through the day and they are still smiling. And I really aspire to be that kind of person. I can be very negative. I'm from New Jersey and I'm Italian Polish, please. I mean, it's get more negative than that. But you know, I also know that I can talk. Here's the thing, I can self-soothe. And that's not easy for everyone. I think if you can teach that skill, like I have a lot of anxiety, I get all anxious and I get nervous and oh, this is gonna happen, that's gonna happen, what's gonna happen. You know, like anybody else. I work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I've had shit tons of money. I've had all of it go down the drain. I've made the mistakes of handing it all over to somebody and said, here, you can have all my money. And then have them say, no, I'm just going to keep all of it. You know, like, okay, great. You know, and I make money every day, which God bless me and thank God and what have you. But I have all these anxieties about that and, you know, all kinds of stuff, relationship stuff. But when I stop for a minute, I am fortunate that I'm able to go take 4 deep breaths here. I'm going to get back into my own body and say, no, that should happen. I have a safe place to sleep at night. I have great work. I have fantastic staff that works with me. I have amazing friends. I have no family. Nobody left. You know, my fiance has some family, but she's kind of, you know, but we're like, you know, we have, which is us at this point. It's going to be us from here on in, I think. Most part, we're on our own, you know, but we have a lot of friends. We have very good friends. And so I look at all that and I say, okay, what's the worst case scenario? My one developer, Phil, would say, the worst thing they could do is eat you. You know, so no one's coming to eat. No one's going to come. No lions are coming to tear me my limbs or my limbs. So, you know, you got food on the table, you got a roof over your head, you got a place to sleep, you got the ability to work at something, preferably something you like. In my case, something I love. I love what I do. I don't like it. I love it. I love every damn minute of it. Because what I do is I make people's dreams come true. That's really what I do. People want to have a published book. They want to be an author. They want to go speak on a stage. They want to tell their story. They want to write a book that's going to help somebody in medicine, or they're going to write a book about how they could be the best damn salesman in the world. Don't tell me that unless you can tell me a story about how you made somebody the best damn salesman in the world. I don't want to hear your sales technique. I want to hear about the guy who did your sales technique and went from living in his freaking car to his $200,000 house on a lake. Tell me that story. And then I'll tell you what your sales techniques are. I get to do that all day long. I get to publish beautiful books. I get to make websites for people that are starting businesses or whatever it might be. So I'm lucky, but you can be lucky too. Find something that is worthwhile doing, makes you enough money to eat, sleep someplace, and you're good to go. And stop bitching about all the rest of it, because the rest of it's nonsense. We're all good. Look, where are we? They might blow this whole situation up in a few weeks. It might be all done. It's all gone. Ba boom. What are you going to look back and go? As the rockets land, what are you going to be looking back on? What are you going to be thinking when Russia lands a bomb on you? You know, you're going to go back and say, "Oh well,
no politics, Lil. No politics.
No, not politics. But no, let's say whatever. It could be anything. You can walk up the door and get hit by a truck, right? Whatever the bad thing that could happen to you is going to come. It's coming, right? Whatever it is, something's coming for you. Whether, you know, but I'm making a joke, like we're making, does it matter that you had $1 million if the whole world blows up or if you get hit by a truck tomorrow? No, it's none of that's going to be of any use to you. What did you do that was useful? Die.
I want to die happy.
I want to die beyond happy. I want to die saying I did everything the right way. I want to die on the thing I run on. Everybody runs on something. Cars run on gas. You know? I run on. What do you run on? If you know what you're running on, right? Passion, right? Okay, great. You run on passion, right? I run on my honor. I want things to be right. I want things to be good. I want people to have good things in their life, and I want to be part of that story for them. I want to be part of your story. That you're you know how many books when people acknowledge a book, I'm in the acknowledgements. I'm like, really? I'm acknowledging Lil for helping me. I do anything. You know, just probably not that that's a little prideful, yeah, but it's nice to know that people know that I'm there trying to make this right for them, trying to make this thing happen for them, so they can go back in their life and go, you know, I got this book. We had a client who wrote a book, and she's from Australia, and she was sitting at a table, and a guy heard her husband's Australian accent. He said, "Oh, I just read this book by a minister's wife from Australia," and he was the minister, and he said, "Would you like to meet the author?" She was like, right next. He was sitting next to her, and she was like, he had read her book, and here he was sitting at a banquet table at an event or something, and had mentioned the hero of the accent, and thought, and there's the author sitting right there. Wasn't that a dream come true?
That's
She
crazy.
could say, yeah, isn't that crazy? I mean,
Yeah.
I love that kind of story, that people get to be published authors, and they get to release some stuff and get their story out and talk about it, tell people how to live a happier, better.
And I love what you do. And I think we touched on this in the pre-screening interview is I in a way I'm trying to do something similar with the show, right? I want to talk about things that people face and how to make your life happier and healthier and self-help and sharing your stories, right? Every time I do a pre-screening interview for the show, I say the 3 topics that I'm looking for are passionate topics that either make you want to scream because you're so angry, either make you jump up and down on a couch because you're so happy, maybe not the Tom Cruise way, but close enough. And something that's going to make you cry because it's that emotional to you. I want people to connect emotionally to these topics and say, I love that, or I feel that, or I understand that, I hear that. And that's what I'm trying to give is every one of us that opportunity to say, I want to be heard.
Right.
And that's what the show is doing for me.
I'll give you Lil's life paradox that sums all of humanity up in a couple of sentences. You ready? This is the entire thing.
Okay.
Write this down, kids. This is the actual paradox that is all of humanity. Everyone in the world is absolutely 100% desperate to be seen. And we are, all of us, 1,000% of us, petrified to be seen.
Yeah.
And that's why I write books.
And see, not once, and I'm going to start so I can take snippets from the shows. I don't watch replays. I don't listen to replays. I don't like pictures. I've always been I don't like being seen, right? And it stems from my childhood anxiety that I'm not anxious very often, but when it comes to I remember the first presentation I did in front of Chamber of Commerce, and I was talking about the 7 mindset pillars. It's a concept that I created. And I was literally in tears. I'm in tears, I'm shaking, I'm sweating, I'm freaking out and hyperventilating because I couldn't stand. And you know what? I'm doing a talk show. not just a talk show, but I'm doing a live stream talk show that's on, I think we're on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. And then once we get enough followers, so everybody watching, please go and follow. Once we get enough followers on TikTok and LinkedIn, we'll be going live there as well. So I'm doing it, right? And I'm facing that fear because I have a dream. I want this show to be the next Oprah Winfrey show. I want it to be that transformational for my viewers. And I can't do that unless I show up.
Right. And look, when I tell people I'm very shy, they laugh at me. That's not possible. I was an only child, basically. I was an only child. And I lived with a grandmother. And I went to school in one town and went home on weekends to another town. I had no friends, so I'm really basically very shy. And I fit the paradox. So do you. Of course I want to be seen. We all want to feel like somebody cares about us, sees us, and is concerned and wants to be with us. But at the same time, we don't know what people are going to think. Is my hair perfect? My hair's never perfect. I have Harry Potter hair going on. It's always a mess. But that's the thing. And you're showing up, and that's the part. You got to show up anyway. You got to be there and show up. It's not easy to do for everyone, but if you do it, things change. You can change and you can affect change and make change in the world. And you're doing that. And look, somebody may say you're crazy. You'll never be the next Oprah. I want a Pulitzer Prize. I say this to people say, yeah, you want a Pulitzer? That's going to happen. I say, well, you know what? Here's the thing. If I don't want a Pulitzer, I'm absolutely not getting one. It's a promise. It's a guarantee. So if you want to be Oprah or the next Oprah type thing or whatever, you got a shot at it. Mm-hmm. You're doing it. You're showing up every day. If you don't want it, well, I promise you aren't going to get it. It's not going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. You got to jump in. You got to want it.
I keep telling my husband, and in the pre-screening interviews, I'm like, yep, this is the next Oprah Winfrey show. I am the Oprah and Tony Robbins. I'm like the Oprah and Tony Robbins baby, just better because I'm like the combination, right? And that's what I want for the show, right? Again, just the ability to help people change their lives one show at a time.
I think you're fabulous. And if I lived anywhere near you, which I won't because you're somewhere where it's really cold.
Oh, you should see the snow we have here.
Yeah, no, I don't do snow. I'm in Florida, so I'm going to stay.
My backyard is at least up to my chest.
Oh no, no.
I'd fall right in.
I'm mad that it's raining today and I can't go to the pool. And I live in an RV resort right now because I'm living in my 35-foot Winnebago RV, which I traveled all across the country with, and it was a lot of fun. We did that, and came back and I said I'm going to take the RV and do my own thing for a while, and so I did, and off I am. And eventually I'll probably sell this and do something else. We're looking at possibly buying some property out in the middle of nowhere, which I think our goal, our dream is within the next couple of years, very attainable, to buy a piece of property and have a place where we can do retreats. Because the wife to be is an artist, and she does phenomenal things with art, but she's also a white light healer. So
I love her.
Being able to put that together. Yeah, she's awesome. She's incredible.
That was one of my dreams. When I became a spiritual teacher, that was one of my dreams, is hosting retreats. As an identity coach and a spiritual teacher, I will absolutely down the road host retreats, weekends, because obviously I'm in the show Monday to Friday. So weekend retreats in Canada are coming your way from Melissa Krechler Identity Coaching. That's coming.
Maybe you'll have maybe come down and do one with us, and we have to come spend a weekend with us and fly down. But yeah, we want to put we want to put like properties around the houses around the property and be able to have people come in the winter when it's cold where they are, come here. And
if only there would have been one you guys would have liked. It was what are they called, yurts?
Yeah,
there was a resort in Ontario, and I'm in Manitoba, so there was a resort in Ontario, in Monaco, Ontario, and they had yurts. And you would it was this whole resort, and I think there was like 7 yurts plus the main house, and it was beautiful. And I'm like, honey, we need to buy that because then I can host retreats in the middle of nowhere in Ontario.
Yeah, that's kind of what we want to do. We're thinking like small buildings. Maybe we actually own a yurt. We own a small yurt.
Nice.
We do. It's not a great yurt. It's like a tent yurt, but it wasn't a fancy yurt. We do own a yurt. We bought it for the kids, the nephews and nieces play in, like Walmart or something. But we want like real nice yurts. But we're thinking putting together like she sheds kind of things around, and
absolutely
having people have their own cabin and be able to invite 8 or 10 people at a time to do writers retreats and to do art retreats. And she does acrylic pours, and it's a whole thing she does with the acrylics. I can't even explain it. But the point being, we're crazy artists, I think is what it comes down to. So, and it's a good thing. So we're working our way in the right direction, but that's all you can do. Just keep moving.
We all have our own strengths.
Dory said it best. Just keep swimming.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are at that hour mark, so I think we should probably wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining me. If anybody is wanting to connect with Lil or myself, please do so. All of our contact information is in the podcast, the website, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all over. You can connect with us wherever. All of our information is there. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments, send us a message. However you want to get in touch, let's get in touch. We're open and available. For anybody watching or catching the replay or even listening to the podcast, I am always on the hunt for co-hosts. And I'm blanking. Oh, see, one of those days. I'm always looking for co-host, featured topics, and sponsors. See, I was blanking there. My inbox is always open. Please feel free to message me. I'm so excited. I love this episode. Now I'm just like, I think my hype is wearing out now because we're like, oh, it's over. It's like a sugar drop. Thank you so much. I really appreciated this episode.
This has been one of the most fun interviews I've ever done, or whatever you want to call it. It's not even an interview. I don't know. Conversation. I do 1 or 2 of these a week, and this one's fun. We had a good time. I hope I wasn't too esoteric or I don't know, deep in my crazy head, but I am my father's kid. So
Crazier the better here.
good. Well, it was lovely. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. Like I said, anybody wanting to reach out, please do so. Give a big hand for Lil, and I will see all of you tomorrow. Lots of love. Bye.